All right. Looks like we are good to kick things off. So welcome everybody to AI in the GSOC. This is a topic that us on the panel have been talking about individually and in different groups for a long time, and so excited to chop it up a little bit today. We've prepared just some general topics to go through. But please feel free to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we will get to as much as we can during today's session. If we don't get to all of the questions, we will make note of the questions and who asked them and make sure that we're following up with you after. Before we get started, we'll just do some quick introductions. I'm Ryan Schoenfeld, co-founder and CEO of HiveWatch. The least important person here today, as I'll be moderating. But let's kick off our panel with Ellen, and maybe just a quick introduction of yourself, where you work, what you do, and we'll get into it.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. My name is Ellen McFadden. I am a program manager for our resilience, GSOC, and crisis response programs at Salesforce. My focus is really on deploying new technology and process development for these organizations.
Awesome. And John?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks for moderating today. Much appreciated. My name is John Nemirovsky. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Sage Integration. We support our enterprise clients, the Fortune 500, with that have cutting-edge tech stacks, and try to introduce them to automation and AI products, and with some of our great technology partners like HiveWatch. So thrilled to talk today about the challenges in a GSOC and how AI can help bridge those gaps. So thanks for having us, Ryan.
Awesome. And I'm realizing here immediately as I hand things off to John, I'm going to have to be a little bit more specific on which John it is. So John Polly.
Good afternoon. Ryan, thank you for inviting me. John Polly, Chief Solutions Officer for ProTecht Solutions Partners. It's CEO, founder, all the above things. At the heart of it, I'm a security technology consultant. I get to geek out over security tech and tell people about it.
Awesome. Well, let's do some geeking out about security tech together. We're going to kick things off here with a quick poll, and then we'll jump into it. On your screen, you should see a poll question. Give everybody here a few seconds to answer. I'm a slow reader, so I'm going to give you a few more seconds. All right, let's see what people said. All right. I have a pretty interesting even split here across the board, which is I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see how many people are in the process of implementing or have implemented. I think that's really interesting. I personally was expecting to see more in the no camp. So that's really awesome to see and hear. Thank you all for participating in that. I just want to start high level and go around and we'll start with the exciting part, and then we'll bring it down in a little bit. But what are you most excited about in terms of AI's promise for what it can do for security operations? And that's intentionally vague, and we will start getting more specific. Ellen, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So in the GSOC, I'm really excited about AI being able to complete these routine tasks that have kind of saddled we call it the Go Center. So sorry, I'll say Go Center and GSOC interchangeably. They've saddled us for years, and it feels like we finally have a solution to solve for some of these routine things like employees reaching out about badging issues and stuff like that. I think that's what we're most looking forward to, driving efficiencies in that way.
Awesome. John, as you and your organization, John Polly, do evaluations of emerging tech for big end users and security programs, I think people have been confused for a long time about what AI is and what its practical applications are. What are you advising organizations that you do tech evaluations for about what's the proper use of AI, what tech is there and ready to go versus stuff that may still be too bleeding edge or still in like developmental phases?
So I start out with the best technology in the world for the wrong use case is the wrong technology. Let's define their use case and let's find the right technology that's going to do that. If the right technology has no AI, right, then that's where we go. But at the same point, I'm finding that a lot of the clients I'm working with are or have talked with, there's a little bit of confusion around AI. Is it video analytics? Is it automation? Is it interoperability? Is it integration? What is it considered to be? And quite honestly, for the use cases, it is all over the map, right? Where I'm trying to solve the problems is let's get past what traditionally we've called AI, and it's video analytics, and those are great, but what are we trying to solve for? Are we trying to get people in the building faster using biometrics? Are we trying to do automation as Ellen talked about, and let's actually speed up mundane tasks to actually solve a problem? Are we using the AI capabilities and in redundancy with some of the traditional pieces to have the systems fact check themselves to reduce alarms, right? So it's defense in depth, if you will, but having those systems understand enough about the other systems that they're connected to go, oh, hey, I had an alarm here, I need to do something with that as well. Oh, and it can be as simple or as complex as we need to make it.
John Nemirovsky, you're selling technology to organizations and helping them implement it. Number one, what are you hearing from them in terms of the ask and the problems that they're trying to solve? And how do you go about being a good thought partner for them in terms of helping them select and implement the right solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I think it's about helping your clients get in the right frame of mind around AI, and maybe change the paradigm shift a little bit that they're going to buy a technology to solve a problem. It's really understanding what their problems are, and most of our clients their two big challenges today are workforce development. They can't find enough workers to staff GSOCs and other personnel, and then two is the work they have. How do we use AI to automate these routine tasks, whether it's surveillance monitoring, feeds, access control verification, so that the personnel you do have can do A work instead of B work. I think that's what we're trying to help solve for. Our clients are all asking for predictive analytics or using AI for predictive analytics to reduce response time, and maybe Ellen will expand on that if she can later, because they've done a great job of that, of kind of identifying threats before they escalate. And then AI in a lot of remote monitoring. We started to talk, Ryan, cloud-based AI and remote monitoring, and I didn't see the enterprise clients go using that, but now I do more than ever. Sometimes I see it in events, sometimes I see it as backup or third shift. And I think the biggest thing is as a resource allocation tool is where they're looking for AI to solve problems. So our clients have brought to us, especially in the GSOC, what their problems are and what AI technology can we go out, help find to solve for those. So I think it's being very consultative, staying up, talking to people like yourself, Ryan, and John, that are on the evaluating bleeding edge technologies and have created solutions that are helping solve problems for our clients that have large GSOC operations around the world.
How do you think about, though, evaluating, like the term bleeding edge technology is also a scary one, especially when you're talking to the enterprise tier customer. how do you help them, one, understand whatever evaluation that you as a provider has done, and ultimately as somebody that has to support the things that you've sold them?
Yeah, great point. So we've developed a test lab to test everything ourselves, but most of our clients are that much like yours, are that Fortune 500 look client, Fortune 1000 look, or privately held 200 client that have their own test labs that are testing the technology right along with me. And in some cases, they've created test labs that are much more substantial than the ones we've created because they have those resources. So working along with them to test. Some clients are willing to get out there early and they want to be in front of everything. So they're okay as long as these aren't critical decision systems. They're testing them, but they're testing them in a live atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm able to say ABC company has deployed this through 3,000 sites. And here's some of the challenges we had, and here's what's working. Hey, reach out for Ed Smith and ask him. So we're able to use the clients that want to get out on the front edge of this and want to deploy technologies to solve some of those 4 problems I just talked about, with automating routine tasks, predictive analytics, cloud-based AI. So they're willing to take some type of risk to evaluate new tech, but they're not going to make it their core platform. These are injection points to their platform. But we've got a group of clients like that. Then we have clients that are so rigid that they have AI policies that are so tight that if you mention AI in anything that you say, it's got to go through a 9-month review policy team. And you've got, if you thought the Infocom questionnaires we've been filling out for the last 3 years were heavy, try and fill out some AI questionnaires and getting small partners to assist with that. Our biggest challenge in vetting some of the new AI companies aren't just the technology and the test in the lab. It's 2 other things. It's financial viability. Will they be here? And then secondly, when we look at the mega trends that SIA produced, there's an evolution of the channel. And so many of these new AI companies are trying to sell without the integrator involved and right to the end user, which creates another challenge for us as the integrator to understand the tech stack that our clients have built.
Yeah, that's an interesting one that maybe we'll come back to. Before I move on, I just want to remind folks, feel free to drop questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to those as we go. Ellen, I want to turn back to you for a second. I think you're in a really interesting position in your role at Salesforce, which is a AI company in and of itself, developing AI products to sell to its customers and to use internally as part of the normal course of business operations. How does that marry with what you all are thinking about in terms of your use of AI specifically in the security program? And does it make it easier for you to try to adopt tech, or are you running into the same hurdles that John mentioned other customers are having in the adoption of AI, especially from outside providers?
Yeah, I would say it makes it more complicated, not easier. We've got directives from our leadership team all the way up to the CEO of using our own products internally. So there's a little bit of a mad dash right now to use some of our agentic products and create use cases where it feels like when we can come to the integrators or the vendors or whatever directly, we can have a more productive conversations sometimes and this is our problem, can you guys help us solve it? Whereas sometimes it feels like instead we're trying to fit into our own internal tools, but it's the reality, so we need to fit into the Agentforce work, and we're working on that right now. I would say it's kind of twofold. We need solutions that work for our problems, and if Salesforce internal tools don't have that, we're still allowed, to go external and find what works for us and our problems. But we're trying to find solutions internally as best we can to kind of drink our own champagne. But yeah, it certainly makes things more complicated in finding things.
That sounds so much nicer than eating our own dog food. I like that.
Yeah.
What can you talk at all about some of the tools for security that you've developed internally?
Not specifically, but we
Whatever you can share.
yeah, so we're doing a lot in things like, knowledge bases, I guess. So putting all of our like SOPs and ERPs and stuff into an agent. So the agent can help, whether it's to a GSOC operator directly, something like, hey, I haven't dealt with this problem in a really long time. I don't really remember how to do this. Putting in a question, and the agent is a lot faster at responding than an agent could look up something. It's tricky because we call them agents, like the humans are agents, but also agents.
Right.
The operator will look up something a lot slower than an agent can put back information. So that's been good. And then also with like badging routine tasks, like I kind of touched on at the beginning, solving for those kind of what feels like it's a simple problem statement that the agent can solve for right now. And technology is available now instead of roadmapped items.
And that would be like somebody has a badge request and you're looking at certain rules to determine like, can we automatically resolve this? And if so, then
Yeah, exactly. Like if an employee walks into the building and their badge isn't working for whatever reason, maybe the agent can solve it, or if they can't solve it, they're able to file a ticket with our team for a human to respond.
John Polly, I want to talk about data for a second here. For these systems to work, data is obviously a very important part of how AI works, how it's trained, what the future of it looks like. And I think there's different types of systems from that standpoint in terms of what you're likely evaluating. We've all heard the term garbage in, garbage out. But from an implementation standpoint, security has been one of those industries for a long time where implementation of new technology tools has been brutally long and painful. And a lot of it has to do with connecting to legacy systems. But then the question becomes, okay, you're connecting to legacy systems and you're trying to do this bleeding edge advanced tech. How do you think about and advise your customers in terms of like preparing for using some of that technology, and how clean and perfect does the data have to be before they're ready to use it, or can they just start?
No, they can't just start. There's got to be, if you're doing a major project like that, you've got to go in and do some database cleanup and prepare ahead of schedule. Now maybe there's tools, maybe there's things that are out there to help automate that, but you've got to have that database. The data has to, as you said, it's got to be somewhat clean. I don't think we're ever going to get a crystal clean piece of database unless it's day one start. And even then, I think we've got some preconceived things that come in with that. So, yeah, I use the term frequently that when we're talking about data for AI, it's, what is the system you're using? How was it trained? How was the data trained that you're going to utilize for it? Let alone we've got to start with as clean a database as we can get, but there's so much out there now that when you start looking at the models, it's like it was trained for one very specific thing that only does this one very specific thing, kind of to the agent piece, but they're now selling it as a whole, which it's like giving the toddler the keys to the Ferrari and saying, go for it. Well, when they turn 16, they're going to have a wild ride, to say the least. Whereas when we've trained our data correctly and you start with a model that's somewhat clean or mostly clean, and then you also have done the back end piece on it. You've got a fairly well trained 16-year-old getting keys to the car. They're still going to have their moments that it's going to go sideways. It just is, but it's going to be much more controlled and less frequent. So when I'm talking with clients, what are you trying to do with AI? Let's make sure that these things are implemented upfront the right way, and let's pick the technologies that have trained models correctly and didn't just, hey, we're trying to take one feature of looking at a red hoodie and apply it to everything on the planet. Well, then everybody is going to have a red hoodie or they're not.
Well, maybe this would be an interesting time then to talk about some of the differences in types of tech. I know I spend a lot of time doing education around computer vision versus large language and large video, and like the different types of models and how they might functionally be applied for security. But can I push on you, John Pauly, a little bit more to talk about those different types of underlying techs?
Sure. So computer vision is a model that's been trained for a specific task. We're running into some of the analytics aren't even computer vision models. Then you've got some that are neural networks, deep learning models that are self-learning to some extent. But then you get so that's been the term in our industry for the last 4 or 5 years now, is deep learning neural network models, where they will self-learn what's coming in front of them, right? The large language model has been somewhat unique, but obviously gotten a boom since ChatGPT and generative AI was released in November 2022, right? It's now the ability that it can start to, within guardrails, understand the text that's been put in front of it and say, oh, I can infer that this is what you're trying to say. It's not just, okay, the white car came in front of this line 15 times, it must be a white car that I'm looking at, right? Now it's going in and saying, if the white car comes in front of this line, I need to do something else, right? And so it's making inferred judgments, not sentient judgments, if you will.
John Nemirovsky, how are you helping your customers as they're thinking about implementation of new technology in general and specifically AI, which can be, from a total cost of ownership perspective, pretty expensive? How are you helping them think about that total cost of ownership and the infrastructure and then really ultimately the business case behind justification for budget, et cetera?
Yeah, in some cases, Ryan, we're trying to help them build an ROI, right? And that's, in some ways, it's easier to do if we're trying to take them to a virtual GSOC or a consolidation of systems through some AI technology. In other cases, it's about better. We talk about the two biggest challenges our clients have today. One is workforce development, and two is workplace safety. And some people call what the heck's workplace safety? Well, workplace violence, but no executives come into a meeting that you title workplace violence. So we've started to call it workplace safety meetings. And when we start to think about AI and threat protection, this really ties in real well with John Pauly was talking about. Your database has to be clean, right? If I'm going to look at historical incident data to anticipate, predict events to make preemptive actions, my data's got to be good, or I'm making predictions based on bad data. So we start much of the same place as John did, is trying to get databases cleaned up, and is everything that we've been taking in right before we start to try to help with some type of anomaly detection. You know, as you talked about earlier, that person, or John did with the person with the red hoodie. Well, is he wearing the red hoodie with the hood up and it's 98 degrees outside? That's where the AI can come into play, right? If he's wearing a red hoodie and it's 40 degrees outside and the hood's up, maybe maybe that's not an anomaly.
Maybe he doesn't want the sun on the back of his neck. What do you know?
That's right. Maybe I don't know anything. But making those real-time alerts, I think, are where we're trying to help our clients. So it's either ROI based or trying to get better at predictive analytics in most of our cases today, Ryan.
From a pure budgeting standpoint, you know, when you're looking at these software platforms, whether it's us, it's somebody else, it's any of the AI products out there, there's a cost for the software, and then there's a cost for deployment, and then there's a cost for the infrastructure. And in some cases, depending on the type of AI that you're using, the infrastructure costs can way outpace the software costs and the implementation costs. What are the best ways you think organizations can start evaluating that up front? Because I think, like, doing a lab POC is one thing, and things tend to work reasonably well in a lab, and maybe you get a pre-configured box that's shipped and everything works great. But then you start talking about deploying to hundreds or thousands of locations or tens of thousands of cameras across an enterprise. That cost can become astronomical. How do you think about that up front?
Yeah, so most of our clients, which are almost a mirror image to most of your clients, have done this already with their cyber teams. So their cyber and physical convergence, they've been doing this to get out and to detect vulnerabilities across their IT platforms to prevent coordinated attacks for years before AI's come to security. So most of the organizations we deal with have already understood what the financial model is going to look like and infrastructure is going to have to look like here, because they've already been through it with their cyber teams. And again, security's trailing along, 2 to 3 years later, talking about AI. So when we talk to a CISO, a security leader, about cost infrastructure, and there's going to be a cost up front for software, cost for deployment, and then an ongoing subscription, that model's been through their organization on the IT side for years already. So in most of our cases, they know they're going to have to build some infrastructure to add AI to the tech stack.
Hey, Ryan.
Great. Yeah.
With that, one of the things I'm finding is, we've run into this infrastructure piece with cloud video, right? Access control, those are logs, those are text. That's nothing. The minute you put video involved, that infrastructure can go through the roof, and it's just depending on how much you're putting through and the size of the cameras and all that. But also, I'm finding within the AI models that we're not things that are streaming cameras, right, or working with cameras. They're not pulling the camera data. They're in some aspects, they're just pulling the metadata. And so depending on what that AI is doing, can also have that conversation with infrastructure, because if they've got a 10 gig pipe already, because that's the infrastructure the building has, and all we're doing is pulling metadata off of systems, that's going to ride that 10 gig pipe all day long. If you try to pull, 4,500 cameras across that 10 gig pipe in real time, you're going to have a problem with everybody else trying to do stuff on there. And so I think the conversation around AI is changing on that infrastructure a little bit, only because what's that AI actually pulling back across that network? Is it going to be the full video files, or is it just the metadata that's just snippets of information sporadically? And I think that's helping the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We've got a few questions that were submitted, so I'll start getting into some of those as we get into relevant areas. But John Polly, while you're up, we've got a question here about my favorite four-letter word, the PSIM. So they have multiple systems integrated with a PSIM. Where would the data be collected?
Depends. Well, if it's on premise, it's all coming back into one system. But PSIMs, I love the term, the single pane of glass, right? Everybody loves it. But PSIMs are supposed to pull disparate systems together, right? So that data is being somehow collected by the PSIM, but it's also being collected at each one of those other disparate systems, right, in different pieces. So, and it is also dependent on the PSIM. But
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you our approach to it, even though I'm not supposed to talk other than moderate here. But like, we get compared to a PSIM a lot in that integrating disparate systems. I think there's a couple challenges when you look at disparate systems and then trying to have meaningful data, and the word normalization comes to mind. And that's a big part of, like, I know how we approach connecting to all those different systems is, how do you take the different outputs, because every system outputs their stuff in the way that's impactful for that system, not necessarily thinking about how it's impactful more broadly across the organization. And so part of what we do is normalize all of the outputs into a data lake, so that data lake has standardized, clean data that can then be queried for actionable insights and program metrics and things like that. I don't think you can effectively use data across all of those different systems without doing some amount of cleanup or normalization. John?
Yeah, Ryan, I
Right.
think you and John did a nice job talking about that. I think as we work with clients trying to help consolidate systems to make their GSOCs more efficient, by looking at that single pane of glass, we always make them aware that you might be deploying a HiveWatch solution, but HiveWatch is only going to be able to give you what that SDK or API that is delivered to them. So may not get full functionality of a system's analytics or a certain feature that you were used to getting when you use that system on its own, is we always warn for that. And then some of the undocumented features, as we like to call them, will still come through as, on the HiveWatch platform that were existed on the Company X platform as well. So there's some cautionary notes there. Just because you consolidate it doesn't make all the undocumented features go away, and it also,
Right.
you may not get all the features that you had. So I think there's a lot to review as you consolidate and understand what's included in that API or SDK that's connected to a PSIM.
Yeah, I find that there's a lot of education happening in the process now too. Like, people have done things away for a very long time. And I know for us, at least, we're trying to educate folks about, why that may not be the best way going forward. And so from, the standpoint of what you just said, one example is we take data from all these different systems and enrich it. A lot of times we'll get asked, hey, when you're done with that, can you write that all back to another system? The short answer is we probably could. However, those systems don't have places in their database to store the enriched data. They can only store the stuff that their system was built to store. And so a follow-up question that came into the PSIM is, how effectively can you implement audit queries? I think the answer to that is, where is your source of truth going to be for the data that you're auditing? And I think, as you start thinking about integrating all of these systems together, is like, which place is now going to be the source of truth for data, and how are you going to get that data clean? I want to move into people here for a second. John, you mentioned that one of the challenges your customers are having is finding enough of the right people. I think, we know that there is a very good play here with balancing technology and people. I don't think we're ready to start selling AI as you're going to get rid of all of your people in your program. I think it's a augmentation to people. For you, John Nemorowski and Ellen, how are you thinking about that balance of people and technology? And like Ellen talked about a few of the types of things that they're augmenting with people, but like, how do you train folks to, it's like a new skill set, right? To work alongside this technology.
Yeah.
Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. Ellen, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
Sure, I can go. It's new for us. It's a new challenge, obviously, like for most GSOCs, but I think I'm approaching it in the way that it's going to be like a new task almost to help work with AI for the operators. I think AI is going to give the opportunity to be, precise, to maybe solve for some of the alarm nuisance issues we have, stuff like that. And it allows for agents to do more like strategic work, like maybe they need to make like an ethical decision that comes up, or they need to work more with like geopolitical stuff that's a little bit more nuanced than AI can currently handle. I think it allows for a lot of that. So I don't think we're approaching it from the lens of like, we're excited for AI to take over the operators' roles and we're going to save a lot of money in that way and stuff. It's just allowing for the human agents to do more important work. And those agents will have to work concurrently with the AI systems. And there's probably going to be a little bit of like maintenance in that. But we really, we're at the beginning of this, so not sure what that's going to look like yet.
Is there a cost avoidance play there, though? Even though you're not trying to get rid of jobs, your program is growing and taking on additional responsibilities. Is there an argument to say, like, we can take on that additional stuff without adding heads?
Yeah, absolutely. I think an example I can give you is like, we have a GSOC in India that was primarily just doing alarm clearing work. That is probably going to be augmented now. So that team is currently being trained up to do like incident response stuff in region. So we're kind of evolving their work. And the operators are really excited about it. You know, it's a new opportunity for them and stuff. So
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are you finding that the people are threatened by the technology and worried that eventually it's going to take their job, or are they excited to be upskilled and learn new things and have this like development opportunity?
yeah, I think that's all in the way that leadership frames it to the operators, you know, like I think the way we're bringing it to the operators right now is very like, this is going to help you. We're going to be able to like upskill and stuff like that. So I haven't gotten a lot of feedback that people are nervous or anything like that yet. It'll be interesting to see like 2 years from now where we're at with that same question. But for now, I think people are just excited about the new technology.
Got it. John, then we'll jump.
Yeah, I think Ellen did a nice job there talking to it. How I like to make this comparison is every summer we bring in a finance intern, and our finance team can't wait to say, all right, you get to audit expense reports all summer. And this intern doesn't like to do that. So now we've got a bot that'll audit the expense reports and give us the anomalies out. So now this intern this summer will just look at the anomalies. So I look at this with AI and a GSOC the same way as a force multiplier. The routine task of looking at access granted and surveillance feeds that are of an empty conference room or a parking lot with nothing moving, parking garage. I think where the force multiplier comes is now our GSOC operators can remain in control of critical judgment calls, like Ellen was talking about, of, hey, this is something I should dispatch for, or I should be involved with. So I think it provides a good balance between having a human in the loop and AI doing the B task that we don't want our operators doing anyway. Just like that intern we have coming in every summer doing that B task of auditing, 158 expense reports every month. So I think Ellen kind of hit the nail on the head. It's that force multiplier.
Well, if things don't work out for me here, John, I might apply for your internship program. So
There you go.
keep an eye on. Yeah. John Polly.
So I thank you. I think where I've seen the GSOC, you get those operators that, and I remember one hospital I worked with, every 15 minutes they cleared out 2,000 alarms. And it was for something stupid that was programmed into the system that could have been programmed out, right?
Okay, wait. So I'm going to interrupt you real quick. What is clearing out? An operator can't clear out 2,000 alarms in a few minutes and actually look at the alarm. So what are they actually? Are they just deleting?
No. They just delete it. They just
Control
A, delete everything. They didn't look at, they didn't pay attention to, they did not clear out any alarm. They did not look at any of those alarms, right? That was their scenario. But the alarms were going, the sirens went off, all the time. You could not have a thought in that room. Where AI, I think, is helping, and there's two different pieces, right? I've seen AI where it just goes in and says, oh, we'll just delete all those for you. No, that's not the answer either. It's to John's point, it's the bot that said, hey, I've done all this work. Here's the anomalies. You need to go check this, right? Some of these things are just never going to have to be worried about because it was a simple whatever, right? And now there's use cases you got to discuss and have those conversations. But the ability for the AIs to say, Mr. Human or Ms. Human, I think this is a problem, or I think this is an issue. You need to go check on it. Or at the end of the day, if a bot does go in and says everything's clear, right? To John's point, but then it says, hey, here's all of what I've done. I've checked 158 of these expense reports. They all look good. Would you go check it for me? And it takes them 5 seconds to look through it and go, yes. Nope, that one's got a problem. They can pick out that anomaly real quick versus it automatically just saying, okay, it's done. It's off to the next task. I think it's a nice feature that AIs are now being used for doing that clearinghouse, but it's also bringing in and forcing the human to still be able to look at it and go, do you agree?
Yeah. We have an interesting like subset of customers who became customers because there was an incident that happened where an operator missed an alarm, or they looked at it, they cleared it like it was one of the other 99% of the alarms that were false, and it turns out that that was the real one. And I think that really informs like how we think about developing our AI. The ability to put 1,000 events per minute through evaluation and get a result in under 10 seconds, like that's impactful. And so to your point about like the operator clearing thousands of alarms in a minute, I think one of the beneficial parts of AI is that like every time the AI is looking at the alarm, it's like it's the first time it's doing something, right? It's a fresh set of eyes at the beginning of a shift. It's a fresh set of eyes just back from break, not somebody who's been there 7 hours clicking through the monotony of everything and having that leathery skin. And I don't think you can replicate that with a human. But there's an interesting follow-up question that came in around training. And I'll open this to whoever wants to answer it. But does AI, like, what is the training process, and how specifically does AI or the models have to be trained on like a per end user, per customer, per application basis? Because I think this is a really important question as people think about like how they might actually functionally deploy AI in their environments.
Yeah, Ryan, I think in some case it's changing the scope or your job description of what you're going to do, right? If your job used to be to manage surveillance feeds and watch how many access denied you got in a day, or door propped and a door forced. Now, if AI is telling you, hey, we only want to look at anomaly detection, so now all those 7,000 cameras that I've got coming into my GSOC, I don't need to look at all of them. I'm just looking for anomalies. I'm just looking for, I usually get 80 door prop reports and door prop alarms in building 180 a day. Well, I went over 200, maybe I should dispatch somebody. The anomalies that are happening in a system. So I think the job description changes for the operator. And I think they'll feel much more good about their job every day, other than watching access denied fly through your screen all day. Or as John gave the example of, I got 200 door prop alarms. I get those every day. So I don't want to look at those on my screen. Let me delete those. It's not just one hospital doing that. That's a real world every day going on in an enterprise solution with an operator. So I think that new I guess force multiplier and handling routine monitoring and things like that of databases that Ellen talked about is really an enhancement to the job you'll come to do every day. So I see as a real positive, but you need to be trained on that. You're not just acknowledging alarms or looking at cameras that aren't doing anything. So I think it's just like any new job you go into. I think there's got to be some additional training to it. In this case, everything's new, so it takes a little bit more training and some out of the box thinking of how you're going to train this person for this new role that was in your GSOC for all these years, looking at those access denied and door propped alarms and cameras that aren't looking at any analytic, or there's nothing happening in that area right now. So I think it's a huge step for the security industry in a positive way.
John Polly, what do you think about training from a model standpoint? And I want to talk about some different use cases for different verticals and stuff. But you mentioned the red hoodie example, and obviously that's a computer vision model that's trained to detect a red hoodie. How much specific training for the models themselves have to be done on a case-by-case basis versus AI that's sort of more broadly applicable?
It depends it's going to depend on the end user and their use case, right? But at the same point, you've got some broad models that can handle, they've been fed tons and tons and tons of data on what a red Jeep looks like, what a white Jeep looks like, the red hoodie, the various things. But then you have that one thing that is specific to that end user. I want to know when somebody comes on site that is wearing this, whatever, right? Maybe it's a VIP at a casino that they're always wearing certain things, or they're whatever. That's a computer vision model that now has to be trained specific to that one event, versus a broader training of again, going into where we're heading with large language models, natural search capabilities, things like that, where some of that also gets to be left to the system to become intuitive. This person comes in every day, all the time on Fridays, right? This is where I actually am hoping AI is going. I know there's a couple companies out there that are beginning to do it, that it's beginning to get it predictive. It's beginning to also move outside of our industry and start tagging in other systems. And so it says, hey, Ryan only comes to the office Monday through Friday. He's been here for a year and a half. He's never showed up on a Saturday, and he showed up on Saturday. And oh, by the way, he started printing something that was near the cap of what we're talking. Our IT department says we can do. All of a sudden, maybe Ryan's getting ready to make a jump, and he's printing something he shouldn't be, right? And so, or maybe he's just printing a ton of birthday, things for his 14-year-old daughter. Whatever that case may be, is it a conversation that security needs to have with Ryan to say, hey, it's the first time you've been here on a Saturday. That's a use case. That's a very valid one, and some of that may need to be trained, but there's technologies on the market today that are already beginning to do that as well, that are just inherently, this is an anomaly. Let's make knowledge of the anomaly.
My daughter's 10, but she acts 19. But thank you for the example.
You're welcome.
Here's a question that's a barrel of laughs. A lot of people are scared of AI. I think it can be one. I think it's not understood super well, and I think there's a lot of education that still needs to be done. We've talked about all of the great use cases for AI and what you can do with it, but let's have a minute of real talk here about, like, what should we actually be scared about? What are the things that we need to be concerned with as we think about implementing these in our program, and then maybe some mitigations and guardrails that we should think about adopting?
Yeah, I think, Ryan, that's a great topic, whoever put that question in. I think we really look at 4 areas every time we have this conversation with an enterprise client. It's bias and fairness to ensure AI models are trained right with diverse data sets, regulatory compliance, right? GDPR, right? Data security is got to be in the lineup card, and then as Ellen touched on it earlier, ethical AI usage, right? And I think those are in every AI conversation we have. Those are the 4 things, and they may be labeled a little different in some organizations, but those 4 topics are always in the evaluation process and considerations as we talk about AI.
Ellen?
Yeah, similar for us. We have really strict governance stuff, as John was talking about earlier. It's tricky to get any AI anything approved at Salesforce right now. But that allows for some protection for us, I think, in the future when things come up, which is great. Part of the AI Council is we have an Office of Ethical and Humane Use for our technology, and that applies to AI use as well. But things I'm really worried about aren't so much about the technology, but loss of knowledge for operators and stuff. Like if there was an outage or something and an incident's happening and the operators haven't had to rely on their own brain for incident work in, a year, and they don't remember how to do stuff, is it really going to slow down our response and stuff like that? So coming up with ways to measure or to, just make sure that's fresh in operators' minds still, while still using the technology and making sure it's still beneficial for the team, is something I'm worried about.
There was something we learned in the police department time and time again: fight like you train like you fight. you've got to keep that stronghold of how do you do this when the technologies don't work, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, I think I'll use the line for the Martian. At some point, it's going to go south, right? You have to assume that something's going to stop working, even if we've built resiliency into it. And I think, Ryan, to your point, part of that is the governance as well. Like that's what happens if the data is lost, or if you look at things like BIPA and the EU AI Act and some of the other things that are out there now, what happens when the data doesn't get removed when it should be, right? Now it's biometrics and AI primarily, but at the same point, if you've got PII involved, personal identifiable information, and it's not being held to GDPR standards or whatever the law is in your state, and so if you're a multi-state, multi-nation company, global company, you've got to have that governance of all the states that you're in, as well as all the countries you're in. And I think that's where I've seen a lot of companies kind of go, where do we go with our AI? Can we do this, or do we just push back and say no for right now, because it's too big of a risk for us to take, because we're moving into Illinois, Texas, California, wherever those might be.
Yeah, I know for us, like development of anything involving facial biometrics, for example, people ask, can you do facial recognition, or can you do different threat things based on, we're not developing that. It's not on our roadmap to develop it. And not because it couldn't be impactful tech. It's that, as John said, like most of our customers are multinational corporations, and there's certainly no global standard for how to implement different types of biometrics. There's not even a national standard in the US. In some cases, it's city by city. Where Ellen, you're in Illinois, that's got very specific laws about the use of different AIs and technology. So I think evaluating that kind of tech as a global organization, you also have to be thinking about, like, what's the regulatory landscape for us to be able to implement this across the org? And are we going to use technology for some parts of the business and not others? And then what does that mean for duty of care? And what does that mean for all of these other things? Go ahead, John.
Ryan, such a great point that you and John brought up with the laws around AI being city by city. And I recently spent a day on the Hill, we call it Security Hill Day, where we met with 85 senators and congressmen about issues like AI and privacy. And the idea behind that was just to gain and understand, help them understand better what we're doing with AI and privacy and security. And I think it's going to be a continued effort for all of us to continue to create awareness to get that legislation, I'll say, corrected.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, with the last few minutes here, I just want to take a minute to introduce HiveWatch and Sage for everybody who took time to join today. We'll change the screen here. But in the meantime, again, I'm Ryan Schoenfeld, co-founder and CEO of HiveWatch. We're a GSOC automation software company, and recently released our AI operator for the GSOC. So if you want more information on that, hivewatch.com/AI, and check out the AI operator. John, I'll hand it over to you for a quick Sage intro.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Sage is a pure play systems integrator. We're fortunate enough to work with great technology partners on this call, like HiveWatch, and we've got some great clients like Ellen that we get to work with every day, and we get to talk to people like John Polly about technology to make sure we stay on the cutting edge. But we've got empowered teams. You see a picture on the right of a puppy called Sage that came from a charity event that we sponsored and raised a bunch of money for, Canines for Heroes, and they named the puppy a few months later after us Sage, and that's a picture of Sage. She's 9 months old now, and she'll be assigned to a veteran in need over the next couple of years and be able to do things like comfort that person, get medicine, open a refrigerator and get a bottle of water, ease them if there's some anxiety. So some amazing things that they've trained Sage to do. But we work with our clients on embedded solutions, service programs, partnering with the best technologies out there. And I think our view of the landscape is we just want to continue to be the best service provider to a client, one client at a time. We have no visions of ever being the biggest. We just want to continue to provide best-in-class service by partnering with great technologies and great clients. Thanks, Ryan.
John, I'm going to try to train my children to do some of those tasks that you're working on with Sage as well.
Yeah.
In the last minute here, thank you, John and Ellen for taking the time today to share some knowledge with everybody. Hope you all learned something. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for hosting.
Cheers.
Thank you.